Cloud. Okay. Yay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm excited to talk to you all about Purim and get to do some learning together. I know a lot of you are on when I was doing classes on Monday nights and whenever that was in the summer. When, like, what is time? I'm not sure. But just a refresher, this is really something interactive. I hope it's discussion based. So please feel free to ask questions, interrupt. You can raise your hand. You can just speak. Also feel free to use the chat function. And I can usually kind of monitor the chat. So I will monitor that. So if you have a question and you don't want to go off mute or you don't feel comfortable, you can share that in the chat, or you can also just share a comment or other thoughts in the chat. And so feel free to do whatever works for you. What else? Yeah, I think that's all. Just to be mindful of muting and unmuting. So I'm going to ask that if you're not actively speaking, you keep yourself on mute, because sometimes, there's just like background noise and it can be hard to hear. So please keep yourselves on mute, and then feel free to unmute when you want to say something. Cool. Okay, great. Let's do it. I am very excited to talk to you about Purim. My birthday's in Adar, so I feel like I have this like affinity to like Adar and to Purim. And yes, my birthday's coming up for those playing at home. So yeah, Purim. So it's a 3-part series, and today we are going to start with learning a little bit about the Purim mitzvot. That there are 4, and I think honestly, I was talking about this with my partner earlier, and just how I feel like the mitzvot of Purim are really unique and different than a lot of the other the other holidays. So we'll kind of dive into those. And one of the questions, kind of the meta questions, is like, what's going on with these 4 mitzvot that we're going to talk about? Kind of like, how are they interplaying? And yeah, what do we kind of make of them, both separately, but also especially in combination, all 4 of them. So yeah, that's where we're gonna get started. So, but first, before we like really launch into it, I'm gonna invite you, because I like to hear from everyone, just invite you to drop a word into the chat when you think about Purim. Like, what does Purim mean to you? Just like a word or two. It doesn't need to be like the philosophy of Purim, but when you think of Purim, like, what's Purim? Go. Yeah, like, what is it? You want to write it in the chat? Hamantashen, yes, Amy. Frivolity, yes. Happy Hamantashen.
Happy fun holiday.
Fun. Thank you, Dahlia. Yes, got another fun. Yeah. Yes, there's definitely that. Okay, I'll give another moment if people are still typing, or if you want to unmute yourself. Great. Yeah, so there's definitely this like lightness to it. Megillah, awesome. Thank you, Bonnie. Feminism, yes. Megillah Esther. Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit, and we'll go more into that in our later sessions as well. Yeah. Sharon, I'm not sure what you typed.
I'm trying to write it. Oh, wait.
You can just say it. What is it? Oh, saved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a nice lead in. So I'm going to, I should stop. Okay, I'm going to share my screen in a moment. I'm just going to make sure I have the right thing up. Okay, yes, here we go. So we're going to take a look at the 4 mitzvot of Purim. And as I like to say, getting drunk is not one of them. We can talk about that if we have time, if people are interested, but that's my little rant. Getting drunk is not one of the 4 mitzvot. I'm not saying you can't or you shouldn't. Okay, you can do whatever, but that's not one of the 4 main ones. So maybe we'll get into that later tonight, but here we go. Okay, here we are. Let's talk more part 1. So just gotta move my screen a little bit so I can see most of you. Okay, great. So here we are. This is at the very end. We skipped all the good stuff. We'll go back to it in another session of this Let's Talk Purim. We'll delve more into the actual story, but there's so much good stuff there. But here we're at the very end, right? So the like 2-second summary is that, right, we thought we were all going to die. The Jews, right? Haman wanted to kill all the Jews, and Esther and Mordecai saved the day. Yay. Okay, that's a really simplified version. But anyway, okay, so great. So now we're at the end, and the Jews have been saved, right? They've been allowed to kind of fight back against the people who are supposed to be fighting them, and they are able to overcome their enemies. And so what does he say? So this is the very end, and we have Mordecai, who's become kind of the second in charge, and he's going to send out letters to all the Jews, telling us how we should celebrate this victory that we have and that we were being saved, like Sharon mentioned. So I'm going to read it in the English. I just want to zoom in a little bit so you can all see. Actually, I don't want to read. Can someone else read it? Someone else please.
I want to read.
Okay, Alan, can you
wait?
read?
I'm going to get my hand out, okay?
Oh, where'd you go? Okay. Are you ready?
Now?
Yes.
Can I read now?
Yes, you can read.
And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that there were in all the provinces of the king, both of the king Ahasuerus, both near and far, to enjoin them that day to keep the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly, the days wherein the Jews had rest from their. I don't have my keep on. Can I get my keep on? Can someone else to read?
Okay. We can have someone else read. You can. Okay.
I want to get my keep. I want to get my keep on.
You can get your kippah. Okay. So we have. Yeah. So if someone wants to continue from verse 22.
I can read.
Okay. Perfect.
And the 15th day of the same yearly, the days wherein the Jews had rest from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to gladness, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and gladness, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Jews took upon them to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I did the bolding. That was me. But in case that wasn't clear. But yeah, so we have Mordecai, who has written this letter, and to say, okay, that the 14th day of the month of Adar, which is when we celebrate Purim, and then the 15th day, which is called Shushan Purim, the day after that, are to be days of rest from their enemies, and just like this is when we celebrate it, and that they should, and here it's the bold is what we're going to be talking about, right? That they should make them days of feasting and gladness, and of sending portions to one another and gifts to the poor. And okay, let me try and highlight this in the Hebrew, because this might be familiar to some of you, maybe, but I'll read it. So, so here it is. So, right, we have this Yemei Mishteh. Mishteh is like a feast, and Simcha and happiness. And then we have Mishloach Manot, which are sending portions to one another. And maybe you've heard that word before, right? Mishloach Mano, when we send gifts. Ishrehu, person to their neighbor, and Matanot Le'evyonim, and gifts to the poor. So I highlight that because a lot of times when we're talking about the Purim mitzvot, sometimes people use the Hebrew terms. And so you see that these Hebrew terms, right, Mishloach Manot and Matanot Le'evyonim, which we're going to look at, we're going to delve more deeply into, but those things are actually in the Megillah, right? They go all the way back to the text. And so it's not just these random things, but already, it's so interesting that already we have a way of celebrating and commemorating the holiday when it's like just happened, right? This is like right after all of this stuff went down with the Jews. Mordecai's like, okay, we need to make sure we remember and celebrate, and here's how we're going to do it. It's not like, oh, a few years later, people kind of looked back and thought, oh, we should celebrate this. It was just this right after. These were the things that Mordecai decided would be a good idea to celebrate. Yeah. So any kind of thoughts, reactions, questions to this piece? Cool. Okay. okay, we're gonna go deeper. We're gonna go deeper into it. So that's kind of, I just wanted to show you all where it came from, where these terms came from, and then we're gonna look. So, okay, so now we are in, we're skipping ahead of time to the Mishnah Torah, and this is the Mishnah Torah written by Maimonides, aka the Rambam, one of the earliest Jewish legal codes. And I like him because he's like very clear generally. So right, these codes, it kind of takes all of this data and these different ideas that we have in the Talmud about, okay, what maybe we should do, and he kind of distills it into, okay, but like, what should we actually do? And yeah, so we're going to go through how he explains the 4 mitzvot of, I almost said Passover, of Purim. So yeah, well, we're going to read it in the English. So here is the first one. So would someone like to read just right here?
One is obligated to read the entire Megillah, and the obligation is to read it once in the night and once during the day. It is permissible to read the nighttime reading at any time during the night, and to read the daytime reading at any time during the day.
Yes, awesome, thank you. Okay, so yeah, so here's mitzvah number 1, which is the only one that isn't explicitly mentioned, right, in our Megillah text, which I think is interesting. And maybe it is in some way. I don't know if anyone can find where, you know, it might be referred to. But yeah, so it's this idea of reading the Megillah once at night and once during the day. Or maybe another fun way to put it is story time. So we gotta have our story time, or Passover story time, both at night and during the day, which I think is also something to like look into. Is it's so interesting to me that it's both nighttime and daytime, right? Because usually things are one or the other, right? Like a Passover Seder, we only do at night. There are a lot of other things we only do in the day, right? Like Torah reading, we only read Torah during the day. Yeah, usually I feel like a lot of times they have one or the other, but not necessarily both. Yeah, so I don't know, why do you think maybe it's important to do both? Or why, yeah, like why might this be something that the rabbis decided, like, oh, we need to have both? Yeah.
You're supposed to hear every word. And I think that the reason they do it twice is that a lot of times when people are making so much noise, you can't hear every word. And this was a way to make sure you heard every word.
Oh, okay. I like that. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of noise going on, and it's long too, right? It's not a short story. It's quite a long story. And yeah, so that could be one thing. Oh, Mindy asked, I thought it was hear it and not read it. Yes. So yeah, so the word like in the Hebrew, likro, even though it's translated usually as a read, it does have this idea of being out loud, like kriyat haTorah, like the Torah reading. It's, you know, we say it as the Torah reading, but it's really like someone's reading it out loud. So yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. So the obligation is to hear it being read, right? So it's not that we have to read it, it's we have to hear it being read. But yeah, I feel like that's more of like a translation thing than a, yeah. Any other thoughts around this? I will say, oh, what's that? Sorry. I will say there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out right now. The conservative movement just put out a tshuva, this like rabbinic, right, answer thing, talking about what do we do for the Megillah this year, because there is a lot of thinking around, okay, because usually you're supposed to hear it directly, and so hearing it through a computer like isn't, you know, ideally you would hear it your ears. But of course, this year, you know, taking into account safety and all of that, they've made some allowances to do it. So I haven't yet like gotten a chance to really dive into that tshuva, but it is something that people are thinking about that I think is so interesting, that we have all of these different ways to kind of figure it out and adjust, taking into account the realities of the world. And yeah, for you said, do you have to read it twice? So yes, like at the most strict sense, you're hearing the whole thing during the night and during the day. At Beth David, we're going to read half at night and half during the day. And that was a decision on Rabbi Shaim, and I'm sure he's based it off of something. I'm just not sure exactly what it was, but there are some thoughts, there are some texts that I came across that talked about not necessarily needing to read the entire thing each time. So I think he's probably basing it off of that.
Rabbi Walker?
Yeah. Yes, Sharon.
I'm just thinking about it. I have no idea. But could it be also because we say the prayers twice a day? Once in the morning and once in the evening, they put the obligation to read it twice, just in case, I don't know, just because it's like a thank you to God. I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, yeah, we have our like Shachrit prayers, and then we have Mariv and Mincha in there. I'm trying to think if there are certain things that we do that are special for a holiday that we do both day and night. I don't know if anyone can think of it. So like I was thinking, sorry, what?
It's basically, it's good triumphing over evil, right, Haman? Yeah. So maybe it's to bring it home again, that you should know how important it is.
Yeah.
Because God's name is never mentioned, but yet we know that God is there. He's in the background somewhere, behind the curtains, we'll say, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just a thought.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think, because like Hallel, for example, that was the thing that came to mind. Hallel we almost always do in the morning, except actually during Passover when we do it during our Seder. So maybe that's an equivalent. I'm not sure. I don't know. Is anything coming to mind for anyone? Something that we do like day and night? Like we don't.
Well, at Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre is, you know, and everybody wears talit and.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Kol Nidre, but we don't do Kol Nidre in the morning also, right? But yeah, it's that's like Kol Nidre is that one time where we wear a talis at night. But yeah, there's not a lot, right? There's not a lot of things that we do both day and night. So we'll keep thinking. If something pops into someone's mind as we go through the rest of it, feel free to shout it out or write it in the chat. But yeah, it's kind of, I mean, I think that there are a lot of really unique things about Purim. And I think this is one of them, that we have this idea that we read it both at night and in the day. And yeah, I'll have to continue to ponder that. Okay, so here we have number 2. So we're going in order that it was in the, sorry to scroll that really fast, but here, right? So we have feasting and gladness. So that's the one we're dealing with first. Okay. So did someone just, oh, okay. I just got, yeah, Eric said Shabbat Kiddush. Yeah, oh, that's a really good point, right? We do Kiddush at night and right before we eat our Shabbat dinner and in the afternoon. Nice. Yeah, that's during the day. Yeah. Huh. Okay, there we go. So maybe could this be like a Kiddush type of thing, like pre-rejoicing, or you have to read the Megillah before we have our feast. Nice. Okay. Let's see if we got other examples as well. Okay, so here we go. So here we're gonna have for the next one. Here, I'll read it, and then I'll read this first line, and then if someone else wants to read the rest, you can think about it. A person should eat meat and prepare as attractive a feast as his means permit. Okay, so that's our mitzvah number 2. And sometimes it's called a suda, which is a way of saying seudah, but you know, anglicizing it, so it's suda. Suda. So here we have this idea that a person should eat meat, and I don't think you necessarily have to eat meat, but it's more about like making it a special meal. And this meal is one that takes place during the day, which I think usually, I know growing up, I didn't even like know this existed, because I think a lot of times Purim day, like we still go to work or do whatever. And so a lot of times I think the Suda can get lost. But I think especially this year when, you know, everything's out of whack, I'd encourage us all to like throw ourselves a little Suda, right? Like, even though it's going to be a Friday afternoon, but like, I don't know, have a little fun extra something to make it special, because why not, right? Just, I don't know, maybe make your favorite thing. Yeah, so that's the Suda piece. Okay, would someone like to read the next paragraph?
And similarly, a person is obligated to send 2 portions of meat or 2 types of cooked food or 2 types of food to his friend, as it says, and send portions one to another, 2 portions to one person. And all that increase to send to others is praiseworthy. And if they have no money, they should exchange with their friend. This one sends to this their meal, and this one sends to this their meal, in order to fulfill and send portions one to another.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Yeah. So that's Mishloach Manot, right? If we kind of boil it down, it's 2 types of food to a friend. And how do we decide what's 2 types? It's like 2 things that you say a different bracha over. So like cookies or candy or fruit, or, you know, or whatever. You can be creative. Put a potato in there. I don't know. A cooked potato. Yeah. And I love this piece of like, you know, there's this importance that even if someone isn't really able to afford it and afford to, you know, give away extra food, it's still seen as really important for this act of giving. So they make sure that, you know, you're receiving and giving at the same time, but there's something about this giving that is seen as really important. Yeah, and so I love to like kind of reflect a little bit about, what do you think it is like about this holiday, or about what happened on Purim, that it was decided that we should celebrate it by giving food to our friends? Like what do we feel like is happening here? Like what's important? What's this helping us think about? This isn't like a right answer question. This is like a
maybe something about the idea of, an opportunity to celebrate with other people.
Yeah, celebrate other people. Nice. Yeah, Amy, what are you saying?
I guess the idea of like continuity, community, like it was a community that was saved, so now celebrate with those who are around you to strengthen the community at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I love that. Like this idea of, yeah, acknowledging that it was a community that saved, and what better way to be in community than give each other food? Like we love food. Yeah, awesome. Other thoughts?
Can I just ask, in what you just read, the food that they're giving, it sounds like it's more like some proper food, something you would eat at a meal, whereas what people normally give now, you know, it's candy and cookies. Do you know when that happened?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what kind of the historical evolution of Mishloach Manot was, but I think that there is a way. So I had a teacher in rabbinical school who like hated Mishloach Manot. He was just really anti the whole thing. And he didn't like, whereas I think it's fun to kind of like put these little gift bags together and like give them to people, he like was, no, this is dumb. And his thing was, as long as he would bring food to, we would have like a Purim, at rabbinical school, we would do like a Purim meal. And so he would bring food, and his thing was like, as long as people eat my food, it counts as Mishloach Manot. So you can still fulfill it as a meal. Yeah, I mean, I think that it can go either way. So I'm not sure exactly when it kind of switched into being smaller portions. but it could still be like, you could still like trade meals with someone if you wanted to. I think this, probably just got.
No, I understand. It's just like what is common now is you get junk.
Yeah. Which I think is also interesting to like reflect on is, like, maybe think about being more like, what would be a more meaningful practice of mishloach manot instead of just, giving out junk. I don't know. I like
have to get rid of it before Pesach.
Yeah, right. It's like the issue of finishing everything before Passover. And I mean, I love getting hamantashen, but not everyone does. So it's an interesting question. Yeah, Marian.
I'm just curious because I don't remember what this refers to when it says Esther 9:22. And since, didn't she make a banquet? What was the portion that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand that sentence.
Yeah, so we're gonna go right up because we have it. Yes. Okay. So it's talking about here. So it's so here's verse 22, right? So it's Mordechai saying what we should do to celebrate Purim, and here where it says, and of sending portions to one another. And so why do they cite that here? It's because of why it's plural, because it says portions, it says manot instead of mana. So they're saying, because it says portions with an S, that means that we need to give everyone, we give it multiple portions instead of just giving one thing to a friend. We have to give 2 specific food groups to a friend. Does that help clear up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other thoughts around mishloach manot? I think it's such a,
I was thinking that maybe the old days people just lived so much closer to each other. So if you made that pot of food or some stew with your meat, you could just run across the street and give it to a Jewish neighbor. But maybe the way we live now, you got this food like candy and cookies that they can last for months because they're not the real thing. So maybe, you prepare it and it's 4 days till you give it to your friend.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, definitely. Like there's a lot to think about in terms of like, I feel like this could be a whole other class that I'm not qualified to teach, but around like food and food production and how we've become like disconnected to our food sources and all these pieces of the food system. That right obviously tie into how we do mishloach manot because it's how we relate to food. Lots of interesting things about food always. But yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I've been thinking, I enjoy giving food to people and stuff. And I think especially because, I don't host anymore for obvious reasons, that I'm excited to kind of think about how to make mishloach manot happen this year. And I accidentally bought like a huge bag of flour, and kind of as soon as I bought it, I was like, oh my gosh, Passover. So I'm gonna be trying to use a lot of flour and but spread it out so no one else has too much flour baked goods left over in their houses either.
You should be like me. I don't make it, I just buy it.
Could do that too, yes. Whatever works for you. But yeah, I think also thinking about, as we're putting together these mishloach manot, to think about like why, right? And I think, Amy, you had a good point about, thinking about how this helps bring community together, and what are ways that maybe we can do that with our mishloach manot this year, especially because we can't gather together in community. Is there something else? Like maybe there's, you want to send a nice note with the food you're giving, or, write someone a personalized letter, or I don't know, right? You can do whatever you want. There's so many ways to be creative, but to think about how to help foster community. And this is a way to foster community without even going into each other's houses. So I think that's pretty cool. And we didn't even innovate that this year, right? This is really old. Okay, I see Stephen Crafty said, what about the keynote for Tisha B'Av? In terms of it being a mitzvah that we do at night and day. Yeah. I'm not sure though, is that like, I feel like that's more of a custom though, but I could be wrong. But yeah, that's a good point. Okay. We will keep going. So now we are on number 4. So we have, right, we got our Megillah, we got our Suda, our festive meal, we have our giving gifts to our friends, of food, and now number 4. Someone like to read?
I can read.
Yes.
In English. One is obligated to give to poor people on the day of Purim. One should give no less than 2 poor people one gift each of money or types of cooked dishes or types of food, as it says, Esther 9:22. Gifts to the poor, 2 gifts to poor people, and one should not be particular about Purim money, rather give to every person who puts out his hand, and one should not change Purim money for another charity.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so that's our last one, is giving to the poor. And again, same, I guess I'd love to hear kind of reflection, same question as for Matanot Levi, for Mishloach Manot, like what's going on here? Why do you think this was something that was decided, right? That Mordechai decided, okay, we're going to celebrate Purim, and this is one of the ways we're going to do it. We're going to give gifts to the poor. Like, how is it? How do you feel like it's related? Or ties in?
I would say, like, just continuing with. Sorry, somebody said this before. It's celebrating community and remembering that the poor are also part of your community.
Nice, yeah. Bringing in everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like other thoughts?
And also, Rabbi Walker?
Yes.
Maybe also the poor cannot do the festivities that you can do, the celebration. So this way you're making sure that they also can celebrate the same way as you do, because you're thankful. That's safe.
Yeah, so it's also like another way of bringing people in.
Left out, like was just mentioned too, but this is because they don't maybe have the means to do it.
Yeah, bringing people in. Yeah, definitely.
Sort of like the time we're living in now. People are really in a tough spot, a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, life is hard for them, so.
Yeah.
Rabbi Walker?
Yeah.
In Israel, the yeshivas go around, the young bookers go around and they ask money from everybody. They go like on apartment buildings, like in outside of Jerusalem, they do it on the 14th, and on Jerusalem, they do it on the 15th. Most of the time, they're a little drunk, but they go and nobody can say no to them, because it's so that they have enough money to continue education, I guess.
Yeah. So I definitely know in when I was living in Los Angeles, there were people who knew, like I was in a very Jewish area, and there were people who knew when it was Purim, and they would come to like the area, so that it was easier for us to like give. It's such an interesting thing, but like, so because they knew that we were like giving, it was like especially a mitzvah on that day, right, to give money, and so people would come make sure they were out to like be able to, and I thought it was interesting, but I also appreciate it because it made it easier for me to like just, you know, do the mitzvah and be like, okay, like you need this, here you go. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, so Devorah, you said like a food bank. Yeah. So this is about, this specific giving money is really about food and like helping people take care of their like immediate needs, right? Because I think when we talk about like charity and tzedakah and all of that, there's so many different places and ways to give it. And right, there are lots of really worthy causes. And Purim is like specifically around food and like feeding and like helping people provide for their basic needs in that way. So
I think the last line is very interesting. and one should not change Purim money for another charity. So that means you have to keep your charities that you always have, and this is in addition to. Am I interpreting it right?
Yeah, exactly. They're saying, you can't just like put it aside and be like, oh, I'm going to give it, and then be like, actually, I'm going to give it to this other worthy cause. Like, yeah, exactly. You have to give it. Exactly. And here we have like another, I don't know why it's here. I'm just going to fix that so it's not on 2 pages. And this mitzvah is like seen as so important. And I mean, I think this is like the mitzvah of this year too, because I think it's just so many people are really struggling this year. But we have a further explanation of this mitzvah of matanot le'evyonim. So would someone like to read this here? Yes. I can read it. I'll give you all a break. I'll read it. Okay. One should rather spend more money on gifts to the poor than on his Purim banquet and on presents to his friends, aka Mishloach Manot. No joy is greater and more glorious than the joy of gladdening the hearts of the poor, the orphans, the widows, and the strangers. He who gladdens the heart of these unhappy people imitates God, as it is written, I am to revive the spirit of the humble and to put heart into the crushed. Right, so we have even more so, right? Like at least here, Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah is saying that actually the most important one, right, the one that we should do if we have the most limited resources is this one. We should spend more time and more energy making sure that we're doing matanot le'evyonim, like giving gifts to the poor, than any of the other mitzvot on Purim. Any thoughts or reactions?
What about the other side of the coin? You give to somebody, you give it to the poor, but they don't have money to do the mitzvah of giving to other people. So that's sort of like, can make them feel very bad if somebody gives them, on Purim, but they can't reciprocate to anybody else. What do you feel about that? That's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, our text said something about how if you can't afford to give a gift to your friend, that it's okay to kind of exchange things. And I think this like matanot le'evyonim, this piece of giving to the poor, isn't something that's supposed to be reciprocal. This is like you're giving it and you're not thinking that you're going to get anything back, right? This is not about exchanging. This is about giving.
No, I don't mean it in that way, not to give back. Now you give something to a poor person, but they want to do a mitzvah themselves and give something to somebody else, but they don't have the means. So are you not embarrassing them by giving them something because they don't have the funds to give to somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of questions around giving and just giving and how to do it in a way that is respectful to the humanity of the other person, right? Because everyone here, no matter what our means are, we're all people and we're all deserving of respect. And and I think that here it's about giving and I mean, I imagine doesn't always feel good to be in a position where you have to depend on other people's generosity. But that's a reality sometimes. So just doing it with compassion is the best way. And I mean, Judaism has a lot to say about giving money and how, right, Maimonides himself, the person that we're reading, talks about how it's better to do it. Like if there's a way to do it more anonymously, that's the best, right? So you don't embarrass the other person. But here that's not really necessarily possible. But yeah, Eric, you wrote, tzedakah takes two, one to give and one to take, each is equally important. So yeah, someone has to be willing to accept the gift. And I mean, I think that this text, Marian, is about encouraging the people who have the means to make sure to do it. Because it's, I don't know, in some ways it's a lot more fun to like take a lot of time planning a meal and figuring out what you want to give in your Mishloach Manot, right? This is the least like fun one. And so there's kind of a push to say like, actually, this is the most important. So make sure you're doing this, even though it's not as fun as like putting gift baskets together for your friends. Other thoughts? around this. Yeah, I'd also say, I think, towards this idea of like why this particular mitzvah. One teaching I heard from one of my rabbis, Rabbi Sharon Brous, is how it's acknowledging that part of Purim is all about how things can kind of be flipped upside down, and right, like for example, like, there's a ton of things that get flipped on their head, right? So Haman thinks he's about to kill all the Jews and he's going to hang Mordecai, and then what happens? He ends up getting hung at like at the thing that he built to kill someone else, and he gets killed, right? It gets flipped on their head. Or like Vashti, right? She's queen, and then she like kind of in an instant becomes pushed out, and right, a lot of these like changes of fate where you think something's going to happen and then all of a sudden it doesn't, and this idea that kind of life is really unpredictable and things can change in an instant, and that's like a big piece of Purim. And I think that, and what Rabbi Brous says about this is that this ties into it because it's this idea that we're feeling grateful that we have the means and we are able to give money to the poor because we recognize that it could be us, right? So it makes it a little bit more selfish, but this idea that we never know like what it's going to be like. And this gives us some comfort that when we are giving to those who don't have the means, it means that if you know, our faiths change and we become those people, that we know that other people will help us as well, and kind of like helping to both bring people in, but also to help like acknowledge that could be us one day, and we want to make sure that we treat people well because we don't know, right? Fates can change and things can change in an instant. And
also, could it be, Rabbi Walker?
Yeah.
Also, could it be that not everybody who's having difficult times now are going to stay in that position? And then one day when they come out of it, they'll remember, and the next time around, they'll be helping others too. So not everybody thinks of giving, but when something's given to them, and when they are in a tough situation, when they come out of it, they may say, hey, you know what? It was given to me. I'm going to give back. And a lot of times you give back more because you're so grateful.
Yeah, I think, right, just the way I was talking about how, you know, you could have means one day and not the next. Totally the opposite can happen as well. And yeah, it's true. Dahlia.
It goes back to the community. You know, we're all in it together, in good times and in bad times. And you know, and today you can be down, and then tomorrow, God willing, you do better. And then when you do better, you give again. You know.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I have some more things we could do, but I kind of wanted to take a moment to like digest all of these four together, right? So just a quick reminder, right? Our four is, do we want to do like yell them out? Okay, what are they?
Read the Megillah twice.
Read the Megillah twice.
Mishlach mana.
Mishlach mana, giving gifts to friends.
Matanot le'avinim.
Suda.
Matanot le'avinim, and Suda, festive meal. Woo! Okay, so those are our four. Everyone was listening. Good job. Round of applause. But yeah, now I'd love to take some time to kind of think of them as like a unit, right? These are our Purim mitzvot. And right, we have mitzvot for all of the holidays that kind of, right, like are a package, right? For Shabbat, we have a lot of things that are all about like resting, right? We get this very clear message what Shabbat is about. But Purim, we have, and I love how a friend of mine summed it up like this. We have story time, we have feeding yourself, feeding others, and feeding the poor. I mean, that's kind of a like very simplified version of it. But like I would love to think a little bit more about and hear your thoughts on kind of how these four are coming together in relation to Purim. It's like a big esoteric question for almost 9 at night. But any thoughts? It doesn't have to be fully formed. Anything that's like coming to your mind? Yeah, Lorraine.
Yeah, I guess two things. First of all, I think we associate food with lots of things, but particularly celebration. So it's just many ways of celebrating food. And also, I was thinking about to the poor. We're talking as if there's a finite line below which you're poor and above which you're not. And it's not like that. And so maybe people who are poor are giving much less than we are or something different, but it doesn't mean that they can't or aren't giving.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, it's not like there's like this definition of, okay, like you're below this line or you're above this line. And right, there's also not a like there aren't requirements for monetary values for any of these things, right? We're not told well, we have to give $10 worth of food to our friends, right? It's just 2 pipes. So the same with the gifts is that, yeah, it makes it really adjustable in terms of what are your means and what are our abilities each time. Yeah. Other thoughts around these 4? Oh, okay. Eric said
I would just say it's a lot of food. Like you're giving the food, you're having the meal, the Suda. You can argue that the money for the poor is so they can also afford to eat or and sorry, what's the other one?
Celebrate.
Hearing the Megillah twice.
Read the Megillah twice. Yeah. Okay.
That's the one that doesn't fit in as well. The other 3 that are the other 3 are the ones that are like really listed in the Megillah itself, and it's all our food. Yeah, it's like poor food, your friend's food, and then the festive meal. Yeah.
But I think that the festive meal is partly because of Esther having the big party, like the big banquet for Ashverosh and Haman. And that's to commemorate that. Like we always have things to commemorate, and that would be commemorating that.
Yeah. Where like there's some tie into this reenacting and like the whole, right, it's both that feast, but also kind of the beginning, right, chapter 1 of the Megillah, it starts out with this like wild 6-month-long feast that's happening. And so there is a lot of like revelry and joyousness in that one that kind of carries in as well.
King Ahasuerus, as it is written, I think, he was a silly king. They call him silly. So he went both ways, you know. He at one point he would have a party, but because Vashti wouldn't dance for him in front of everyone, you know, we know what happens there. So I think the festivities and all that is one thing. I see a clear message all the time, even though it's not Passover yet, that I always remember. I tell my kids, my own children, when I talk to, that in every generation, you always get somebody rises up to try to kill us because we're different. And I think that's in the line of Purim too, you know?
Yeah.
We're celebrating, of course, that we are saved and everything, but in every generation, you always get someone. We can even push it forward to now, but that's politics, which is, we're not in the right forum right this second. But, you know, it's, that's why maybe the Megillah twice. Who knows? You never know. We're thankful that we went through it, but don't forget, you know, what could happen. We're always walking a thin line, very thin line there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
sorry.
Yes, no, thank you. I understand that. Yeah. I also want to share, Eric wrote to me, he said, I'm going to read it. Snack time, sharing time, and tzedakah time are all related to eating and enjoying, and that ties into the feast at the start of the Megillah. So a little bit about, tying into this feasting. It also strikes me that they're all very physical, right? All of this eating stuff, it's very physical. And I think a lot of times holidays can be both, there's something physical and like body related, but there's also like a spiritual piece. And a lot of this feels very like, it's like tied to our bodies, right? It's not like we're going to say a prayer. It's like, we're going to listen to the Megillah and we're going to eat and make sure other people are eating. And yeah, I wonder if that has to do with something about being saved, right? Because when we think about, potentially being killed, right? There's this piece of, we want to make sure that our physical, right? Those most basic physical needs are met, because when we feel like we're in danger, that's like kind of the piece that we need. The certainty that we need before we kind of go on to the spiritual. But there's something, I don't know, that wasn't a fully formed idea, but like there's something about this physicality. And I think that ties into the drinking as well, that a lot of people do, right? It's like very physical. And yeah, I'm not sure.
But don't forget we fast first.
Yeah.
Some of us do.
Because of this, before we celebrate. So it's,
Yeah, and we like fast. We go at whatever Tanit Esther to fast, and then we go into this feasting and food everywhere. Yeah.
We also physically, I guess, like the custom of wearing costumes, like you physically transform yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that in. Like, yeah, there's that's another piece of, yeah.
I was just thinking about the giving to other people. So the giving of manot and the manot le'avinim. And then I thought about your comment at the beginning that, it's not a mitzvah to get drunk. I mean, you can do whatever. But I was thinking of it in terms of, enjoy yourself, feast, but don't get so drunk or don't get so involved in your own feasting that you forget about other people. You have to keep in mind your community, just like Esther thought about her community. So that was sort of the tie-in to the story.
Yeah, there's a lot of different interpretations around like drinking and what the kind of ideal drunkenness to achieve or not achieve on this holiday is. And one rabbi says, well, there are like a lot of different interpretations of what to do, but one rabbi says that you should just drink enough that you're actually more generous when you give to the poor, which kind of ties in. It's like, not just don't forget, but, like, I don't know, if you've had a few glasses of whatever and, you give a really generous tip, like, but you're doing that because maybe you can't do the math. You're doing that for, people who need it instead of just someone. But yeah, there's that piece as well of balance. Yeah. Other thoughts around this? Yeah. So there we go. So I feel like I have a lot to think about now. Yes. Oh, hello. Lots to think about around these four mitzvot and how they kind of fit together and what they're doing. And I think every year I think about it a little bit differently. And I think there's like a physical piece. There's that like community bringing together piece. There's different like ways that it kind of ties in and alludes to the story of Purim piece. There are a lot of pieces there, but yeah, all good ones. I think, I encourage us, especially this year when things are different, like to really have fun with the ones that you can. Like, I don't know, it feels good to like give people gifts. It feels good to, like when we talk about giving charity, it's not just about like, oh, we're so generous, because like we get satisfaction too, right? Like we can help someone and we're getting a good feeling as well. And so it's like, it's a both way thing. And so, yeah, thinking about what are ways we can do that and do it safely and make us feel good and feel like we're, celebrating along with, of course, if you want to come to the Zoom Megillah reading with a circus, like I hope to see you there as well. But there's a lot of different pieces to this that I think we can really have fun with and make meaningful, even this year and especially this year. Yeah, any last questions or thoughts?
I just wondered, I heard somewhere that God is there in spirit, or he's hidden. Is that why people dress up in costumes to disguise themselves? Is there merit to that, or what is the reason behind wearing a costume?
So many reasons. It's a good question, and we're going to delve into that in another one of our sessions. So okay. We'll have to leave it in suspense. But there's so many juicy things about Purim. When I was like trying to put together this 3-part series, I was like, it should be a 10-part series. There's so much good stuff. So yeah, so we will continue to delve into this holiday. We are not done yet, and delve into the story and those pieces. So yeah, so I hope you'll all come back next week as we continue to delve into Purim. And if you have any questions, I mean, I think you all have my email. Feel free to be in touch. And yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Bye.